show. And, you know, it's truly just a quick update of where we're at. But I'm telling you, we must keep up the fight. We will win. Read my lips. It's coming. And we're combining and joining the effort of everybody around the country. And in fact, I'm going to just say real quick, but I'm not ready yet to announce it, but I am working on a new internet platform so that we can have all of these discussions. I've got thousands of emails in my inbox. I just cannot possibly keep up. Every last one of you has a fabulous idea. You're working hard. You're focused on this campaign, that campaign, the other campaign, all around the country, all these different efforts. We have to have a single point where we can do these discussions and we can see what other people are doing. So I'm working on that. I hope to have that done by Friday and bring that into Update Friday. So that's my goal, and I'm working behind the scenes, and I apologize right now. I'm not calling anybody back. I just can't, because this is crucial so that everybody sees what you're doing and what I'm doing and what everybody is doing, so we can connect the dots. So today, you must see this, the depth of the deception. You have to see this. I'm going to play a few minutes of someone else's video, but this is actually, when I read this, or when I watched it, a lot of things became more clear to me. They're going to become more clear to you. There is absolutely no question about it. We're talking treason. But we just need to know that we can't really fix that right now. We can protect ourselves. And there's some really cool things that just, of course, hit my email 3 minutes before the show. So we'll be talking about that, because these are the tactics you and I and everybody in the nation can use to protect our homes, our freedoms, get justice, keep our assets and our wealth, and hopefully get our country back into the hands of the people. So real quickly, quick update, guys. Monsanto gets a victory over the organic farmers. Don't ever for a minute think that this monster is going to bite the dust. We have to just keep on keeping on. We have to support the fight against Monsanto. And by the way, I didn't even have an article here. I just read about it yesterday. Companies are patenting DNA, and they're saying, oh no, it's not really DNA, it's our drug solution, it's whatever. The fact is that they're using our patent office against you and against me in our DNA. This is truly like, what? Definitely a battle that is in the back of some of our minds, because many of us are really focused on trying to keep our house and our money right now and build our economy. And I totally get that. That's where I'm at too. But I just had to mention that. Real quickly, there's more volatility, stocks, bonds, and foreign exchange. I'm telling you, it's going to be more choppy. And in the process, if you'll notice, gold and silver are being beaten down, just as we've been predicting. And just as that little clip I showed yesterday, that reporter from the Bilderberg, where he's got some insider information, and he says everything they've ever said came true. Well, that's because they know they're going to make it come true. So they're just telling them, what they plan to do and how they plan to crucify the home real estate market so that they could suck the wealth out of the country. Sorry. A plan, just like I said. Now, I wanted to point this out. Here's another article. This is PIMCO is a major name in the market. They're saying that there's a 60% chance of global recession in the next few years. I wanted to just quickly point out, if you look down in the article, it says, quote, the latest data on gross domestic product shows the U.S. economy grew at 2.4% annual pace in the first 3 months of 2013, this year, as it continues to recover from recession. And so, of course, my first thought, as yours should be, is to jump over here to Shadow Stats. Let's look at how they used to figure GDP and see how we compare with what used to be, because as I keep saying they change all the formulas so that we can be frogs in the pot and we'll not even know that, oh, gee, gross domestic product actually, when created, figured out the way they used to figure out, it's actually negative 2%. So instead of 2.4, it's minus 2%. Word of the wise, I have to tell you the truth so that we can know and be prepared. So, don't go out and buy something right now. Hoard your assets. Come on, protect your money. Depth of deception. You've got to hear this. This is truly the way it is. And this was done in 2009. So we have to recognize this is what it is. And it will help us in our fight back and understand why it's such a battle and not to give up. It's not just only about saving your house, my house, people's houses. That's definitely what's wakened a lot of us up. But what it really is about is saving our country and our freedoms. Because this is just a symptom, it's just a piece of the puzzle. And absolutely we need to save our houses. Absolutely we need to go after justice. Absolutely this could be the string that we pull that unravels that whole garment of fraud. But we must understand what the enemy really is and looks like.
Up until about the Kennedy assassination and the beginning of the war in Vietnam, the United States is a very powerful engine for world progress. It's the assassinations, the Kennedy assassination, and the others in the 1960s, the beginning of the Vietnam War, and the beginning of the absolute domination of the Wall Street Group over every other interest. Nobody else counts except the Wall Street money masters. That has now made the United States into no longer a force for progress, but something very different, often a force for destruction in the world. That doesn't need to remain that way. The interest of the American people is to fight to take your government back from Wall Street and make the United States a force for progress in the world, which we easily could do if we could just break the power of the people behind Obama.
The main banks of Europe, which were started by Adam Weishaupt and Rothschild, the Banque Nationale de Paris, the Bank of England, the Bank of Italy, have all financed the messianic and war leaders of the last 200 years. Napoleon, Lenin, Stalin. They backed Adolf Hitler. They backed Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And they are backing right now Barack Obama.
The banking cartel had established a beachhead in 1913 through the Federal Reserve Act. In 1947, they set up a parallel shadow government through the National Security Act. From 47 on, the national security state began the long process of absorbing federal and state bureaucracies, while at the same time undermining the constitutional power of Congress and dominating the executive branch. By controlling the issuance of currency and credit, the private Federal Reserve was able to buy up most of the Fortune 500. And if a company wouldn't sell, the bankers would unleash federal regulators to run them out of business. Private central banks in Europe, the United States, and England took taxpayer money and loaned it at over 30% interest to third world nations. The bankers would then bribe the leaders of those countries not to pay back the loans. Their third world puppets would sign agreements stating that when the country defaulted, the banks would be given all the natural resources and infrastructure of the once sovereign lands. But worst of all, the countries would pledge future taxes paid by the people in perpetuity as profit to the private banks. By the year 2000, there were few nations that had not fallen to the designs of the money power. The globalists were now ready to start their final phase of world government takeover, the destruction of the Western nations' economies. To carry out their final takeover, they first removed banking regulations like the Glass-Steagall Act in the late 1990s. This allowed their front companies to issue unlimited credit to the world and to set up colossal Ponzi schemes, the likes of which the world had never seen. The scams were advertised by the controlled corporate media as completely legitimate. Because of the fantastic returns, private investors, corporations, state and local governments invested heavily. They had taken the bait, hook, line, and sinker. To destroy confidence, in late 2007, the bankers themselves began to badmouth the scams they had created. Next, the central bankers cut off the tsunami of fiat money that they had been using to pump up the bubble. When Congress and the public refused to write the finance oligarchs a blank check, the bankers began to engage in financial terrorism. They said that the world would go into another Great Depression unless their demands were met, further destroying confidence. The stock market instantly had its biggest one-day loss in history, but even that wasn't enough to force Congress to capitulate to the offshore banks. Senator Inhofe of Oklahoma and Congressman Brad Sherman of California, amongst others, told the world that the entire Congress had been threatened with martial law by the White House and the Treasury Department if they didn't pass the so-called banker bailout bill.
The only way they can pass this bill is by creating and sustaining a panic atmosphere. That atmosphere is not justified. Many of us were told in private conversations that if we voted against this bill on Monday, that the sky would fall, the market would drop 2,000 or 3,000 points the first day, another couple thousand the second day, and a few members were even told that there would be martial law in America if we voted no. That's what I call fear-mongering. Unjustified.
The final version of the bill was kept secret from the Congress until minutes before the vote on October 3, 2008. The Federal Reserve had promised total transparency, that every dime would be accounted for.
To Democrats and Republicans who've opposed this plan, I say, step up to the plate. Let's do what's right for the country at this time, because the time to act is now. To prevent the possibility of a crisis turning into a catastrophe.
After its passage, the public learned with horror that the bill was really a financial coup d'etat by Wall Street. The bill didn't just give $700 billion to the banks. It was a blank check. And as of February 2009, $9.7 trillion has disappeared into a black hole. Within 24 hours of its passage, Secretary of Treasury Henry Paulson said they were no longer going to use the money to unfreeze the mortgage market by buying bad debt.
We went to Congress. Illiquid assets look like the way to go. As the situation worsened, the facts change. I will never apologize for changing an approach or strategy when the facts change.
Paulson has, in the meantime, admitted that the subprime mortgage crisis is not the cause, really, of the breakdown of the entire world banking system and the bankruptcy of most of the banks in London and in Wall Street. He said, we're going to buy up toxic assets, but we're not going to worry about subprime mortgages. What he's talking about is derivatives. Derivatives are the center of the crisis.
He went on to say that where the money was going was a secret. I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issuance of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around the banks will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. The issuing power should be taken from the banks and restored to the people, to whom it properly belongs. Thomas Jefferson, 3rd President of the United States.
Secretary Paulson came in with the Vice President and Fed Chairman Bernanke and made all these assurances that there was absolutely a critical, immediate need to get rid of the corrosive derivative products, all the different names for this, ubiquitous, sub-S retraded credit default swap, blah, 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 blah. Okay? But they talked about them as though they knew what the hell they were. You got the money and you immediately said, what items, what auction?
Now, the Treasury just basically cut that out of the bill. And what we have here is a situation where banks are hoarding the money that they're getting from the TARP. They're using the money to purchase other banks. And all of a sudden, the Treasury sent a signal to the banks, forget about it. We're going to give you the money that you want, and you do what you want with it. Unless you direct it specifically, it's not going to happen. I don't think anyone questions, Mr. Kashkari, that you're working hard. Our question is who you're working for.
Throughout its passage, President Bush and Senator Obama worked in tandem to get Congress to pass the bill without even having time to read it, despite the fact that in major polls, 98% of the American people were against the bill. The leadership in both parties were for it.
And I really want to commend Barack Obama, because as we were involved in the this and that and different provisions of the bill to persuade people, he really gave them confidence that this was the right decision for the American people, even though it wasn't, in our view, a great bill for them to vote on.
I want to take a particular moment to also thank the individual who's not here, and that is Barack Obama, who made numerous calls not only to all of us, but to members of our caucus, and helped us gather the votes on the Democratic side to pass this legislation.
Bank heads then bragged to the press that they were hoarding the bailout money and using it to buy up smaller, healthy banks and insurance companies. Their plan was working like a charm. Next, the central bankers loaned the federal government back $787 billion of our own money at interest for President Obama's so-called stimulus package. And just like the banker bailout, Congress was given less than an hour to read the 1,070-page plus stimulus bill. Barack Obama, who had pledged on the campaign trail to wait 5 days before a bill could be voted on so that the Congress and the people could have a chance to read it, said that the stimulus was too important and it had to be passed before anybody could see it or read it, or the crisis would turn into a catastrophe.
Doing little or nothing at all will result in even greater deficits, even greater job loss, even greater loss of income, and even greater loss of confidence. Those are deficits that could turn a crisis into a catastrophe, and I refuse to let that happen.
After its Friday passage, in gangster fashion, President Barack Obama took a 4-day vacation and said that there was no rush to sign it. The spending bill was really a takeover bill designed to further federalize the states and to pay off rich donors that had donated to both parties.
Personally, I call that extortion. And this is what we're against. And they've got their people. They're singing their song. We need to be aware, and we need to spread this. And we need to work to save ourselves and our country, and we can. We can. But this is, you gotta know, this is what they've been doing, and this is history. This is the facts. So research it yourself. Check it out. But it's no surprise then what we see real quickly. Here's an NSA, another NSA person who is claiming, gee, where did we just hear this? That this agency, taken over by the banksters, let's be honest about it, they've taken over all those agencies we just heard. That was in 2009. And so this is now this year, just yesterday, today. The NSA is bamboozling lawmakers to gain access to Americans' private records. Well, of course. Duh. See, when we understand what the game is, then these things are natural and logical. We're not shocked anymore. We should not be shocked at all. It's nice to know that this is exactly how it's working, and that way we can develop our strategies back that will really actually work to protect us and to change the game. The little video doesn't work. If you can get it to work, great. You can listen to him. I just wanted to read out loud a couple of the things. They quoted the video here. He's this is Mr. William Binney, a 32-year veteran of the NSA, who helped design a top secret program that he says broadly changed Americans' personal data. He actually helped to crack the codes and entered into this. He's now a whistleblower. So thank you very much, Mr. Binney, for joining us. And so then they talk about the 9 internet companies that said they're part of the PRISM program. Should Americans be surprised at this? Well, no, he says. And down here, they're talking about, how much data. He says, the interviewer says, so we're not talking about billions of pieces of information here, we're talking trillions. And of course, Mr. Binney says, oh yes, my estimate, his estimate of phone calls and emails jointly would be on the order of 20 trillion over the last 12 years. So just so that you know, it's like everything. And he also is saying that they don't have to do this. The fact is that he gave them secrets of how to actually figure out, says, my personal view is that the intelligence community is bamboozling Congress and the administration. They are telling them they have to do this in order to find the bad guys, and that's just absolutely false. You don't have to do that. There are ways and means to do that, and I left them the ability and capability, and they just threw it away. Well, of course they did, because they want all the information. And here's the answer back. When some person says to you, well, I don't really care because I'm not doing anything wrong, you tell them that what this does is give them the ability to make it look like they or you or any one of us has been doing something wrong and is a traitor. And then they can just stick us in prison like that without due process because, we're treasonous. And when you explain it like that, when they know everything about you, then they can manipulate that data. That's the scary part. And people will, that's a good response that they respond to. When I say that, they go, you're right. Yeah, I don't think I like that. So let's spread that word. That is the point. When they have all this information, they can make you look bad, they can make me look bad, and how are you going to fight back? You going to believe them, or are you going to believe me? When they have access to all the data, they can erase it, they can change it, they can do whatever they want. That's the scary part. So that's just a quick update about this data collection and total intrusion, warrantless. And here's another article. The rest of the world is absolutely, totally upset and disgusted with the fact that our country has now been hijacked by the bankster thugs. And now our country is being used as a force for evil in the world. And that is not what you want, and that is not what I want. And it's up to us to take our country back. Keep our homes, keep our economy, keep our freedoms, turn this around so that we can actually be a force for good in the planet. And the fact is, they already said it was relatively straightforward. We just have to take the control back from the bankers. And we can do that without them knowing. So, another activist post, of course, let's shoot the messenger, not the monitor. They're going to be filing charges against poor Snowden, who released this information. He's a whistleblower. We the people are all totally thankful that this is bringing this out into a discussion. Rand Paul, others, they're on record now saying that they're very afraid he'll just be killed. In fact, Rand just says they'll use a drone. Come on, this is what is going on in our country. And of course now 86 civil liberties groups and internet companies are demanding an end to the NSA spying. The ACLU has filed a lawsuit against it. So people are fighting back in ways that they can, sending letters, global petition. But I'm telling you, the fact of the matter is, they're not going to stop because of this. The only way they will stop is not having any money. We take the money, we've defanged them. The people have to take the money back. And there's ways we can do that surreptitiously, like we talk about, setting up a public bank, doing non-profit beneficial financing companies, getting more and more of our counties, cities, people to use other sources of credit for their business needs and transactions, going local, not giving the money and the interest away to the banksters. That's a gradual decline in their income. At this point, they won't even notice. So we can do this right under their noses. At some point, like others are pushing, let's nationalize the Federal Reserve. I don't know, let's just set up a public bank and say, we don't need you anymore. So those are discussions, but it is all about the money, the house loss, the freedom loss, our economy, the fact that that we have business cycles. These are done specifically to ruin you and me. That's the point. It's not a business cycle. It's a bankster cycle. Let's call it what it really is. Now, the AP is turning on Obama. And so it's on the verge of imploding. Well, I don't know. The fact of the matter is, we already know that every president puppet has to sign allegiance over to the banksters to even get in that position. And part of that allegiance is, I will take whatever it takes. And so they will sell it, and then they'll be the bad guy, and then they'll push him out of office, and they'll give us another puppet. So, everything was Bush. He was bad, 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 bad. So he took it. So that's the price you pay. So this is meaningless. Yes, they're turning on Obama, but that's the wrong target. They should be turning on the bankster controllers, not the puppets. Let's tell people. Let's make them aware that this is what is going on. Oh, and yes, of course, as we just quickly zip through some of these other things, here's Alabama police are now asking for your DNA at a roadblock for blood samples. Whoa. I don't know about Alabama. I don't think this is necessarily a good idea. They're voluntary. The samples are voluntary, and the motorists are paid, and they're doing a study. But, we really need to rethink some of these things, and we need to start having a good discussion amongst the patriots, the people that really do subscribe to the Constitution and really do want freedom for everybody on the planet. That's us. Of course, the Swiss are caving in to the banksters and tax law because they've been threatened too. Everybody's being threatened around the planet. And this is what we have to recognize. This is what is going on right now. And this is the game they're playing. Now, let's quickly zip into mortgages and foreclosures and fighting back in some of our tactics. So here's Department of Justice announcement, and this is the former president and chief executive officer of U.S. Mortgage, a loan servicing company in Nevada, pleaded guilty today for his role in a scheme to defraud Wells Fargo of more than $8 million. And again, shame on him. They basically didn't tell the truth on their statements to Wells Fargo and created more money for themselves. However, in conjunction with this, Wells Fargo's only defrauded the planet of like trillions. So where's the prosecution for them? That's my response to these. Nobody should be lying, cheating, and stealing. However, it's really tough to see, if you will, the smaller people, that's you, me, smaller companies, not the mega bank controllers, actually getting charged when these banks get away with defying the consent orders, cheating people out of their homes directly, lying, as you're going to see here in just a minute, absolute flat lying and being told to lie. Lying is a business model. Fraud is a business model. Why aren't they being prosecuted? Now, interestingly enough, and I don't know really what to make of this, I just got this link this morning, and unfortunately, the actual event was on Tuesday, yesterday. So if any of you know if you went or you know anybody that went. I'd love to hear about what exactly happened. And so Citigroup claims in this article that they've had 70 such events across the country. And typically, let's see about these facts here. Let me just highlight them. This is, well, let me not. It's not working right. The company has about 70 such events, and typically 2/3 of the people with mortgage issues who attend come away with at least potential solutions. Citi Mortgage usually has between 50 and 20 representatives at work at any given time, so the wait isn't intolerable. Well, depends on how many people show up, of course. And this was inland, Southern California. So this was in Ontario, so that was in San Bernardino County. So all of you guys down in San Bernardino, let me know if anything you know or found out about this event. It was held from noon to 7 p.m., and it's an effort to reach out to clients who are having trouble making mortgage payments. So I would like to know, this statement is so full of caveat, where it says 2/3 with mortgage issues come away with at least potential solutions. Okay, so that actually tells me what I hear being said is, we had this event, all these people came, didn't it look good? We're trying to help them. And they don't do anything for anybody. That would be my pretty cynical evaluation. Please tell me if I'm wrong. I'd love to have somebody actually get a legal modification. The fact is, I doubt a Citigroup can actually legally modify any of these loans based on the pooling and servicing agreements. They don't have the authority to do that. There you go. Now, I did want to bring to your attention, this has really struck me, and we talked about, last year, I talked about a lot, this came up with public banking and the use of eminent domain for the contracts. And I've got a webpage. I'm going to skip over right now to my Homeowners for Justice webpage. If you go to Activism and Solutions, you'll see the loan eminent domain, and I call it loan eminent domain because people are so confused. Eminent domain means taking the property, and we're not talking about property title. We're talking about the seizing, the eminent domaining of the loan contract rights only, just the loan. So the person that owns the property is still on title. It's just the public entity. City, county, state, could be federal, but at this point we were talking at the county level. That was our focus, and you'll see here, you can read through this page and you can read the focus, and the reason I pointed it out is because right here is the Hockett paper on eminent domain of mortgage loans, and he was hired by the mortgage resolution partners who are trying to get county governments to take to eminent domain, take loans that were performing but underwater for their personal investment portfolio. And of course that blew up, thank goodness, because that's a misuse of eminent domain. But they hired Hockett to write the paper. Hockett wrote the paper, and the New York Fed came out just on the 10th, on Monday, this month, just 2 days ago. They came out with using eminent domain to address underwater mortgage debt. So this is the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. So, this is the key insider. So what are they thinking? I'm really cynical, as you can probably tell. And my immediate thought is they're laying the platform for the federal government, which they already own, to eminent domain the loans, and then all the people will be paying the government their payments, so that the banks, which already own the federal government, will be getting the payments. And then they can just sidestep all of this securitization issue. All of these faulty, fraudulent foreclosures are due basically because they do not have the authority to foreclose. I've said that before, and this is the summary. They screwed up securitization. So they do not have the right to foreclose. So when the person stops making the payments and that loan has been paid off at the mortgage-backed security trust by the insurance, actually the owner of the property who stopped making payments should be getting their house free and clear. But the banks can't let that happen, because if they did that, everybody would want their house free and clear. And the banks would have that would admit that the banks did not securitize right, so that means the IRS treatment they got on all of those securitization trusts is false. It would also mean that they've screwed all the insurance companies, and so they would be on the hook for that. So they don't want that to come out either. So I think by the Federal Reserve Bank coming out with this little modest report, and they refer to Hockett's paper, that they're setting the stage. Now here's where you and I have to be really, really fast. If this is what they're arguing, see, by utilizing eminent domain authority, state and municipal governments could bypass the coordination problems posed by the pooling and servicing agreements. They could then reduce the principal on underwater loans, lowering the amount owed by borrowers and thereby reducing the risk of default. And Hockett's report, they refer to that, includes details about the mechanics of such a program, including suggestions on how to finance the purchases and a discussion of the legal basis for invoking the eminent domain power. Now, isn't that really fascinating? I am absolutely almost speechless. And I tell you, it can't be good, because this is a good solution. This is really a great solution for cities and counties in particular, for them to eminent domain the contracts. We already know that legally, when an entity eminent domains property, any kind of property, so in this case it would be the contract, then they owe fair market value back to the entity that is the owner of that contract or land. And since we know legally, actually, if we could get the judges to say so, the banks do not own these loans, nobody owns them, then the idea, the whole argument, the truth is the city and county could eminent domain that contract, not pay anybody, reset the principal to, I've already suggested in my foreclosure town halls last year, at 80 or 90% loan to value. Reset the principal down to where there would be equity enough the person could actually sell and pay for closing costs and stuff and get out at least at break even. But then I recommended that since this was up to the counties or the cities to do this, and they don't owe any money to anybody, that they could actually give the people their down payment back. So if, let's say that they paid $300,000, or let's say that the value of the house is $300,000, but they owe $600,000, and so the government would eminent domain the contract, take the loan back if the owner wanted them to, would set the principal at, let's say, 80% of 300, so that's 240. But let's say that the person put 200,000 down as down payment. They often did. So they actually paid 8. They put 2 down, they borrowed 6. It's now worth 3. So at the 240 level principal, subtract the 200,000. So the person only owes 40 grand. Now, who doesn't want a principal modification and a loan mod like that? That's a fair one. That gives the people their money back. It gives the $40,000 now as a loan payment to the county for nothing. So I saw this as a tremendous opportunity for new revenue streams, for modifying people's loans, for rebuilding the economy, and then, oh yeah, by the way, you could take these new contracts now and use them as assets to establish a public nonprofit bank, so that the county, the city, whichever entity we're talking about, could actually create their own credit, fund their own municipal expenses like road modification. Don't go to the municipal bond market anymore. Forget that. Pay that off. Use your own credit at 0% interest or 1% interest. So the whole thing is a fabulous way for us to rebuild our economies and to help everybody in foreclosure. So we need to figure out, and this is one of my tasks because I've been such a proponent of eminent domain, and yet it was such, literally, I've talked to people and they'll say, okay, who's done it? It's like nobody wants to be first. And I think now, I really think, because Mendocino County, small county, local county, really hurting. They actually sent 6 people to the public banking convention in San Rafael. So I believe that I need to go talk to those supervisors and those activists there, and they need to do this. They need to at least do a trial. Let's do 1 person, 2 people. Let's go out to all the people that are underwater and say, hey, you want to be a guinea pig? Let's do this, and let's get this going before the banks have convinced some other entity, the federal government, the state, and then that'll have taken all the revenue that could have been used for the counties and the cities. And you know I'm such a proponent of local growth, local control. This is the paradigm of the future. It's us. It's all about the people. And this is how we're going to be able to keep a grip on our land, on our money, on our economy. If we got our counties into public banks before they collapse the currency, before they ruin the stock market, before they take all of our, and just take our retirement and our county and city funds and literally just decimate everybody, this, in other words, let's get this tree built. Let's get this tree growing before, the floods come, so that we can hang on to the tree and we can have our tree left once the flood waters disappear. So you're going to have that eminent domain article. You've got my website, which I haven't even updated. This is what I wrote last year. This is the end of where I just sort of stopped because we weren't getting anywhere at the time. We were planting seeds, but nothing seemed to be sprouting. And so you can read Hockett's paper. I did a 3-minute proposed speech. I went to the supervisors here in my county and read it. They smile. It's going to take more than this to really make this work. And at least this, and then this is a little blog article about Mortgage Resolution Partners, about their idea of bribing officials to eminent domain the contracts, just the ones they wanted, on cherry picking. No. This needs to be across the board, and it needs to be for every owner that wants it. They don't have to. I wouldn't force owners into it. You want to battle your head with loan modification with these lying banksters, please do so. You want to take them to court in a quiet title action, even though some attorneys say that doesn't work, go for it. And I'm still working on trying to get actual, true attorneys that actually get honest settlements or get the people to keep the house, not just delay the foreclosure. I guess delay is counted as a win by many people, and with delay, you can actually go over here to my foreclosure defense and do one of those 11 things and at least, no doubt, get some delay. Some of those techniques and tactics are working, at least for that. But they're not going to get you the house back. They're not going to get a settlement. That's what I'm still working for. So just delay the best you can, and I'm still working on the settlements. So eminent domain could be a way. That's why I was really pushing for it too, is because it's a way for all of the contracts in that community. A county could easily send out a letter to everybody that has a securitized loan, says you want a modification, here, sign right here. This is what your mod would look like. And it's up to the banksters to prove now the onus is on their side to prove they have the right to have any kind of a payback. And the fact is, they don't have the rights. Besides, if we use these assets as a public bank, even if a bank won, a mega bank, and a court said, okay, county, you owe that bank X amount, fair market value for that loan, if the county had used these assets and created their public bank, which would allow the creation of credit for public benefit, then they could take some of that credit and pay that mega bank off. That's what I'm saying. Take some of that credit and pay off the municipal bonds. You have interest rate swaps and crap sold you by Wall Street. Put a public bank together, create your credit, and pay them off. and then you can pay back yourselves at cost. I needed to put this link in here because this is a legal study by the University of Arizona simply about the psychology and the issues of the shame of foreclosure. The people believe, and many, I'd say most people in this country still, maybe even the planet, still believe that they're somehow at fault rather than that they are victims of a horrific Ponzi scheme. And so this can help us delve into the psychology and how we can help people that are filled with shame and fear to get out of that, and into getting mad, not sad. Now, here's something I got literally just 2 minutes before the show today. This is fabulous. And this is an article on the blog. Neil Garfield, he's been here on the show. He's basically a fabulous attorney fighting back against fraudulent foreclosures. And here's a blog from another attorney. And I want to just read pieces of this because it gives us great hope. And we need hope, but we need hope based on some facts, something that's really significant and can actually change the legal environment for the people. And that's this. So here's the blog, and then the next link is this affidavit. So both of these links are going to be on the comment section, so you can just click to them. And this is an affidavit of a whistleblower. So this is the affidavit, is an example of why the entire foreclosure process is going to unravel. Music to my ears in the near future. Previously, judges were resisting pleading, argument, and discovery directed at the credibility and truthfulness of affidavits and live testimony in court if they were submitted by a well-known bank. In other words, the judges are basically assuming, stating, deciding, thinking, ruling that if the bank made it, it was true. If the homeowner made it, it was suspect. That's the summary of that paragraph. The judges they've basically, and they still do in general, think that the banks are most likely in possession of the truth, and that any representation from the bank is treated credible, where any representation from the borrower treated not credible. Now, here you go. Bank of America has taken the position that their house is totally in order. They even got the AG of New York, Attorney General, to back off on a lawsuit. But you'll see in the article shortly that now they have an affidavit from someone from inside B of A who swears they are told to lie. Here is what he said. Using the Bank of America computer systems, I, the insider, the worker, saw that hundreds of customers had made their required trial payments, sent the documents requested of them, but had not received permanent modifications. I also saw records showing that B of A employees have told people that documents had not been received, when in fact the computer system showed B of A had received the documents. This was consistent with the instructions my colleagues and I were given. We were told to lie to customers and claim that Bank of America had not received documents it had requested, and that it had not received trial payments when in fact it had. We were told that admitting that the bank received documents would open a can of worms, since the bank was required to underwrite a loan mod within 30 days of receiving these documents, and it did not have sufficient underwriting staff to complete that in time. Site leaders regularly told us that the more we delayed HAMP mods, the more fees B of A would collect. We were regularly drilled that it was our job to maximize fees for the bank by fostering and extending the delay of the modification process any way we could. This included lying to customers. For example, we were instructed by our supervisors at B of A to delay mods by telling homeowners who called in that the documents were under review, when in fact there had been no review or any other work done on the file. Employees who were caught admitting that B of A had received financial documents or that the borrower was actually entitled to a permanent loan mod were disciplined and often terminated without warning. Now, I've already had a request, a question in my email about this morning, and that is, can we use this affidavit in California? And I say to you, anywhere in the world, because we've got people fighting this in South Africa, we've got people fighting this in Ireland, we've got people fighting this everywhere on the planet. Use it. Use it. Put it as a reference in your documents, in your filings, in your pleadings, in your qualified written request letters, in your request for debt validation letters, in your OCC complaints. Use this everywhere. Are you kidding me? Let's make this planetary knowledge. Let's use it, use it, use it. Force them to say, oh, gee, Your Honor, it doesn't apply. And the honor is going to go, how does it not apply? Now, here's its explanation, and this I thought was fabulous. I'd like to just read this. As a partial explanation of what I'm talking about, consider this. You order a brand new TV on Amazon using one of your many plastic cards. The vendor is, by the way, for example, Best Buy. Your account is debited $1,000, which is exactly the amount you agreed to pay. Later, you find out that Best Buy accepted $600 for the TV, and the intermediaries kept $400. You also find out that during the shipping process, the intermediaries took possession of the TV and intentionally dropped it 30 times to make sure it didn't work. During the process, you learn that the intermediaries each paid for a contract of insurance using your money. Sure enough, the TV arrives in 1,000 pieces. Each of the intermediaries who had an insurance contract receives full payment for the TV, probably at the original price of $1,000. The intermediaries tell you that your problem is Best Buy because they're the vendor. Best Buy tells you the TV was fine when we shipped it and directs you to one of the intermediaries that handled either the shipment or the payment for the shipment. You are left going around in circles, and you get worn out and finally accept a settlement that is worth far less than the TV you purchased. Now comes the fun part. The issuer of the credit card, who already got paid, wants you to repay them $1,000 at the end of the month or monthly installments with the interest rate of 24%. All you know is that you got screwed, but you're not real sure how it happened. The purpose of this is to help you understand this is what they've done with the loans. This is it. It's an insurance scam, it's a scam on you, it's a scam on everybody except the insider banksters. That is the point. So here's the affidavit for your referral. And I wanted to show you another PDF real quickly. I'll just zip through it because very few of us are really pro se. But those people that are pro se are frantic for help. I'm in the process, and I'll try to upload this onto my legal action by state page for now. I'm going to build more pages and a better, broader internet platform network of this information so that we could all share and find this information, and I can store lots more stuff and have a directory so that we know where to find stuff, because that's part of the problem. There's whole bunches of issues. But nevertheless, I did receive this information, and this is an insider overhead presentation about how the bankster attorneys can fight back against pro se. So I thought you guys might like to see this. And this is how to deal with a pro se litigant. So remember, this is them on how to deal with you and knock you out. And so they talk about the current climate has led to an increase because attorneys are hard to find, and negative press surrounding the mortgage lenders and servicers has emboldened borrowers. First off, they don't even really understand what the people are doing. The people know they've been cheated. You can smell it. They just don't know how. And they want to keep their homes. And they keep doing all this loan mod stuff, and yet they've been dealing with these liars. Come to find out, now we know for absolute truth. Not that I ever doubted it, but you need proof, you need that affidavit. So, how do you classify them? This is what they're doing. They're classifying you. Are you frustrated, or are you a predator? And so frustrated borrowers really wanted to pay the mortgage, but they're unable to, and they're looking for a loan mod or some type of relief. And so here's the common claims. So let's look down on the common claims: TILA, RESPA, HAMP, breach of contract, debt collection, wrongful foreclosure, and consumer protection statutes. And so then they talk about the predatory borrowers. They're unrealistic and unreasonable. I guess that would be like me thinking that, oh, gee, it wasn't your money in the first place. You never had any loan. There was never a loan consummated. So how in the world can any of these loans actually be accurate? Oh, no, by the way, you never signed the loan docs, and any kind of a loan has to have two people sign. Only I and my husband signed. So how can that be legal? I guess I'd be predatory. And so then they talk about the common claims. Show me the note, rescission of the note, conspiracy, fraud, lack of standing, fraud. Yeah, oh gee, just because you actually recorded fraudulent documents doesn't mean I can't claim fraud. What is that about? And so, interestingly enough, this is how they're viewing it. And these attorneys are acting as if these are fake issues. I can't help but notice that. So the primary objective in dealing with the pro ses is to get early resolution. Knock them out. See, pro ses are emotionally tied. So, and of course they're unreasonable. See, the less reasonable they become. And of course they're talking them as plaintiffs, because this would be in a state where the owners are suing the banks, not in a foreclosure state, a judicial state where the banks sue the owner for foreclosure. The banks are plaintiffs, so don't let that confuse you. Depends on which side you're on, who has to start the lawsuit first. They're the plaintiff, the other's the defendant. And so in judicial states, the banks are plaintiffs, but in non-judicial, the pro se litigant owners are plaintiffs, and that's what they're talking about here. Oh, and notice, pro se cases are expensive to defend because the plaintiff's lack of familiarity with the legal process creates more work for the defendant. That's for the banks. So there's an idea. Let's all file pro se claims. Let's make it more expensive. That's a goal. Try to drag it out as long as you can. Make them pay any way and every way you can. That's what I would say. So, means of achieving early resolution: do a loan mod. Two parallel tracks: do a loan mod and try to get them out of court. Try to get them to settle. And try to get them to try to get the pro se to enter an agreement to deposit funds into the court's registry or trust account to be applied for a modification. First off, then you'll know that you've got them. Secondly, they don't say that here, but when people start making payments into something, they have more of a vested interest in it. They're less likely to walk. So if you as a pro se are being asked or forced or required to do this, fight back, because it puts you at it's a weakening of your emotional and financial resistance. Don't do it. So a means of achieving early resolution: try to get them to dismiss. Try to go to the federal courts. Federal judges are typically less lenient with pro se litigants than state court. So people try to stay in state court. Procedurally, it's less difficult to dismiss a case in federal than state. So try to stay in state. And then they cite these rules: a motion to dismiss and the pleading deficiencies. And so they talk now about these rules. These are the rules and the case law they're going to cite against you. So now you know what they're going to do. More pleading deficiencies: plaintiff's failure to meet heightened federal pleading standard for fraud. This is how they're going to fight back against you. Substantive deficiencies. This is how they fight back against FDCPA. Here's how they fight back against TILA. Here's how they're going to fight back against RESPA. Here's how, some more RESPA. Here's how they fight back against hemp. Here's more against hemp. This is how they're going to fight back against hemp. So you're going to need that affidavit of lying, and you're going to need to review these to make sure your lawsuit, if you're suing the bank and going in pro se, or even if you have an attorney, go through these items and make sure that you either cut them off at the pass. Ideally, you make claims that make these immaterial. That would be the best lawsuit. Here's wrongful foreclosure. And show me the note or lack of standing defense. So the fact is, I'm going to upload this so that you have this to look at. And you can probably pause the live stream on each one of these slides so that you can read the words. But I'll try to upload that today so that you'll have a link in the comment sections to it. Because everybody fighting pro se really needs to have as much help as they can get. My hat is off to you. I don't believe it's something I could do personally. And then I definitely want to get this in before we go. And that is, this is 11 ways to build community wealth. This is already a collaborative. They just released this in April. This is an Illinois Community Wealth Building Action Agenda. And this is from the Governor's Task Force on Special Innovation, Entrepreneurship, and Enterprise. And it's a fabulous article. It identifies specific things, how to retain jobs and build wealth through employee ownership. Develop an Illinois Employee Ownership Center to retain existing jobs. Assist banks to finance employee ownership. They haven't even talked about a public bank, but they're working with the local regional banks to get them to actually fund employee ownership of corporations and companies. And that keeps the interest and the business and the returns local for local benefit. Leverage the hospital investment. We talked about that yesterday, how they can actually go through their procurements and say, how can we procure something here? How can we help the hospitals build more jobs? They can take 2 steps for local development. Promote greater community investment by universities in Illinois. So I'm telling you, why don't you and I in our state, in our counties, take this, just copy this and say, just cross out Illinois and put California, cross it out and put, Florida, whatever state, they've already done these ideas. We don't need to develop the ideas, we need to implement them. That's why I'm talking about these. Here's invest state pension fund dollars in Illinois. Our pension funds in California are just like billions and billions. Why aren't we investing in California? Why are we investing in mortgage-backed security trusts? Which everybody knows we are. All the judges' pension funds, all the pension funds are in just like billions and billions and billions of this fraudulent document. Why don't we do something like, here's an idea, investing in resident-owned affordable housing? How about, these are ideas that we should leverage and send to our legislators and our supervisors, because even in the counties, they've got county pension funds. Why can't the county do some of these at the county level? Take these ideas and say, well, yeah, that's a good idea. I could do this. We could redirect housing dollars to support permanent affordable housing. We could, reform our statutes. There's an idea. So this is Reform Illinois' cooperative statute. And so truly, our laws and our rules and our policies need to be updated to support cooperative business development. That is what they're talking about. Support cooperative development in rural Illinois. Catalyze cooperative job creation strategies in low-income communities. Come on, they're already talking about it. They're saying here, this is in Illinois, a 5-city pilot program might cost $5 million a year with a one-time state-financed capital investment pool of $50 million. Those funds could be dispersed through a request for proposals process in which applicants would have demonstrated both broad-based support from local government, hospitals, and universities, as well as the ability to raise matching funds. And if the state had a public bank, or if the county and the city or cities have public banks, that money, that capital investment pool, could come from the credit created by a public bank. So any and all gains and profits at very low interest rates would flow back into the community, with the public bank and the nonprofit funds fueling economic growth in each of our cities and counties. And convene a community wealth building roundtable. Maybe we should start there. Let's start advocating for community wealth building roundtable. Let's connect with, how about contractors and developers? If your county is anything like my county, and I know it's exactly like my county, most counties are, all across this nation, there's 3,100 counties, and virtually all of them have had horrific loss in development and contractor work. A few, some of the very wealthy, have experienced decline, but it's not been devastation. Most of the counties, I'd say at least 70 or 80% of our counties in this nation, have lost their developers. The developers and the contractors have gone bankrupt because of this downturn. That was the whole point. Builders, just think about it. Builders, developers, visionaries, they're the key people that would lead a revolution. They're the key people that would have assets and resources and the personality to stand up and say, wait a minute, what are you doing? So let's destroy them first. And they've been destroyed. So what I plan to do is go to my developer organization and contractor organization. In fact, I think I already have emails for these people. I'm going to connect. I'm going to connect with them, and I'm going to give them a 15-minute presentation. I believe that's all it's going to take. I'll post it when I'm done. That way you can take it and you can just read it at yours. Anyway, these are super exciting times. They are very scary times. The cliff we're facing is pretty scary and monstrous. However, stop looking at that. Start looking over here. And that's what David Cogg said. You know, when we start having such a lively, animated, positive, lucrative conversation with our communities, that stuff fades in the background, and that takes the money away from them. And that's going to eventually make a difference. What if 3,100 counties actually all decided they were going to have public banks? They were not going to go to the bond market. They would not need Goldman Sachs and Wall Street for any more of their financial needs at any level. They would take all of their monies out of the banks. They would put them all into local, nonprofit, or private, community-based banks. And they would not be subject anymore to any of Wall Street's games. None of their pension funds were going to be in mortgage-backed securities. They shifted all of their funding into local beneficial projects for the betterment of their community. And none of their accounts could be stolen with a bail-in. What if all of our counties did that? Can you imagine? That's my vision. Let's get every county on board. Every dollar in every account. If it's a big city, get a city bank. If it's a mostly small cities and a bigger county, get a county bank. Let's develop community development finance institutions. What if CDFIs financed all home loans for the betterment of the community? So nobody, you, me, nobody. What if all business was financed this way? What if there was a huge growth in beneficial corporations and employee-owned businesses? And we all had our own communities thriving on the benefit of our own effort and money and wealth and business cycle. which would never be manipulated because they're never securitized. There's never any real point to depress your economy. And so you would constantly be building. I like the vision. Thank you for joining me today. More tomorrow. And everything we do, say, and think needs to bugger the bankers, politicians, and bureaucrats. Talk to you soon.
When I was a lass, I was proud of me class, like my father and mother before me.
They taught me to fight for my civil rights,
But it's always the same old story.
the rich reign supreme while the poor can but dream.
Under Labour or Liberal or Tory.
And I say,
Bugger the bankers and politicians. Bugger the bureaucrats too. Bugger the buggers who make up the rules. And if you're one of them, bugger you. And if you're one of them, bugger you.
The system is bent and the money's all spent. We're murdered from every direction.
The workers get taxed while the wealthy relax. With nary a moment's reflection.
where there's brass, there's muck.
And they don't give an arse, 'cause they're programmed against insurrection. And I say, bugger the bankers and politicians. Bugger the bureaucrats too. Bugger the buggers who make up the rules. And if you're one of them, bugger you. And if you're one of them, bugger you.
Now all you good people with passion to vent, don't give up the struggle for justice. But I've done my time on the protesters' line, and these days I show my dissent.
By loitering within my tent. And I say, bugger the bankers and politicians. Bugger the bureaucrats too. Bugger the buggers who make up the rules. And if you're one of them, bugger you. And if you're one of them, bugger you. Oh, bugger the bankers and politicians. Bugger the bureaucrats too. Bugger the buggers who make up the rules. And if you're one of them, bugger you. And if you're one of them, bugger you. And if you're one